Hello, ADA friends. My name is Christine Barber, often referred to as the ADA Lady, and I am here to help you with your digital accessibility efforts. I have over 10 years experience in ADA remediation and training, and am here to help you make the world a more accessible place. Please note that I am an accessibility expert, but I am not a legal advisor. Please always defer to your lawyer or legal representative for specific questions regarding liability and interpretation of the law. So today we are going to get into setting up ADA compliant templates. It's one of the big things I always recommend in training is to have a set of template documents that are already ADA compliant, are already set up correctly, so that you and your team can just kind of grab and go and get started with whatever it is you need to work on, and you already have a great foundation. So one of the big things to start off with is your basic Microsoft Word template in Windows. So we're going to learn today how to set up your Normal.doc file for accessibility in Windows. So the first thing you're going to want to do is you are going to want to go to this file location on your computer. You're going to want to visit C:users and whatever your username is that you log into Windows, app data, then you're going to want to go to roaming, then Microsoft, and then templates, and that's where you're going to find your Normal.dotm file. And this is kind of where you can just set up your normal everyday stuff, what you want your headers to look like, what you want your base text to look like. If you want to include your organizational logo in there, I suggest doing that. You can drop some alt text in it again, so every time you're opening up these files, you're not having to redo and reset all this stuff every single time. It is also great for brand marketing. If you want certain fonts and colors to be used in your documentation, this is another great way to do that and have this on everybody's computer. So even when they just start up a blank document, they're not even grabbing a template, they still have all this stuff already set in there. So let's get started. So here I have kind of a basic Microsoft Word document, and I have my logo up here, and I have some information and some text down below. So if you want to drop your logo on your document, a lot of times people will even put them in the headers of their document. So if we come up here, we can drop our logo in the header, which means it will repeat on all the subsequent pages that we have. And I have a float attribute already on here. That's why I can kind of click and drag that wherever I want. So once you have the logo there, you can right click. And in that drop-down menu, you are going to want to select View Alt Text. And that's going to pop up that alt text menu over on the right-hand side. And we can see that that alt text is currently blank. And we can add some alt text in there that describes your image and describes your logo appropriately. So I'm going to put in ADA Lady logo. Illustration of a woman moving quickly in a wheelchair. I believe that's sufficient alt text for that. If you're done with the alt text, you can go ahead and close it out. But if you have other alt text on your document, if you have more than one logo or partnership logos, you can just go ahead and click directly on the next image, and it's going to keep that alt text menu up. So you don't have to keep right clicking and opening that. So we have here again. There we go. I have all my images set up now, so I'm going to go ahead and close this alt text menu. The next thing are headers in the document. This is really styling, and because Microsoft Word also interprets into HTML, it uses similar codings as we would for the web. So your heading 1 is your H1 tag, your header 2 is your H2 tag, and so on. I know Microsoft offers a title, which they offer right here in the upper right on the styles. This may look a little bit different than you too. If you don't see these options up here where you can kind of view the fonts, it may be that you have a smaller screen, and Windows will shrink this down in Microsoft but you can always pop it out in this little arrow in the lower right-hand corner of styles. And you can see here that we now have the style menu, and you can kind of stretch it and you can see the same things that are up here, but this is just a visual display. Microsoft uses one called title. The reason why I don't like to use title, even though they have it in a lot of Microsoft templates, is the title tag does not convey over to Adobe Acrobat Pro. So the title is not recognized in accessibility tags. It doesn't mean anything to Adobe. So they typically get stripped out and they're just plain paragraph text anyway. So we want to go ahead and use the header tag. So Adobe recognizes, again, those HTML-based codes because accessibility is very similar to SEO. If you're a search engine optimization specialist, which I used to be, it crosses over very easily because a lot of the same codes we put in there for the search bots are similar to the same mechanisms that assistive technology uses for things like screen readers. So it's going to convey the information in the same way. So these are our header tags that we're going to look at today. So a lot of times Microsoft will display some headers up here that are not very attractive. I have a degree. I have a bachelor's degree in design and with emphasis on visual communications. These headers just aren't doing it for me from a marketing standpoint and from an attractiveness standpoint. They're not the best. I do try to stick with Windows-based fonts. And the reason for that is at the time of this recording, 62% of web users are on mobile devices. So, in my background, when I did marketing, I downloaded all the crazy cool fonts. I did all the cool things with the fonts and made them look neat. But when we're talking about accessibility, there are a lot of users who are only on mobile devices. Therefore, they typically don't download any of those crazy fonts or have those things installed. So I like to stick with the Windows-based fonts because I know that they're pre-installed on a lot of mobile devices and they're going to render properly on those devices. Not everybody may have the luxury of being on a Wi-Fi connection, or say you were doing some kind of signage with a QR code to a PDF and someone's trying to pull it up and they only have one bar of service. They're not going to want to download fonts on top of it. Or if you have to remember to port the font with the PDF every time you export it. And it just gets very cumbersome for keeping that up to date. It's also not advisable for the experience of the end user. So I stick with Windows-based fonts. We also want to stick with those sans serif fonts. We don't want any of the fonts with those little curly cues at the end of them. It makes it very hard for our folks who have dyslexia to be able to read those properly. So we like to stick with the straight blocky fonts is going to keep you on the good side of accessibility. Setting up our header 1, since this is going to be my main header in my document, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to highlight this. And so I have header 1 highlighted, and you can see here it's both recognized as normal font because I just typed this out. But I really want that to be, I love Arial, so I'm going to go with that one. It's a really good font, has good spacing on it, has good kerning for those characters that they're not all mushed up together and hard to read. I like mine being bold, and let's see, make it on the larger side. We'll go with a 24, and let's make it a nice dark blue font. So I'll use this preset setting. Of course, you can use any of the colors. Be sure that your color selection is in reference to whatever your background color is that you're working on. You want to have good color contrast. So most of my documentation is on a white background, as is almost all other organizations, where there are a few exceptions. But if you're working with a light background, like a white or a light gray, you want to stick with your darker color fonts. So this way you have that color contrast. Having, a yellow font on a white background does not meet color compliance. You can even see here that Microsoft even gives us warnings now that when we go to select those, it's going to tell you that you have a low color contrast. But if I come over here, it's going to tell me that I have good color contrast. So at least Microsoft can guide us for a little bit as to what works for us so that all your readers have a chance to read your documents, which is what we want. So I'm going to go ahead and click that dark blue, and I'm even going to want to make my header 1 centered. That's my preference. And so we're going to go up here. So now that we kind of have it looking like we want it to, we can come up here, and the only thing you have to do is hover over your main header 1, and we're hovering over. It doesn't have the number 1 on the main heading, but you can see it here once I hover. So I'm going to right click on that. And it is as easy as clicking this button, update heading 1 to match my selection. So I'm going to click on that. We can see that my header has now updated here in my document. And this is also great for document processors for formatting, because now if you create this long report and it's a 50-page report and you have a whole bunch of headings and subheadings, and your boss comes to you and says, hey, I really want all of the header ones to be, a dark purple color that goes with our brand. So instead of having to go through and pick all of those out in your document, all you have to do is come back up here, update it to match your selection again, and it will update those headers throughout your entire document. You don't have to hunt and peck for those. And it's a consistency in styling. It's a consistency in branding. And having those headers is very important for people using screen readers, because headers almost act like a table of contents for them, where they can navigate your content just through the headers. It will also help them understand the organization of your information. For example, maybe you are in the information technology department, and that department falls under the finance division. Maybe not the everyday person would know that, but if you have your header 1 as finance and your header 2 as information technology underneath that, folks will understand that information technology is a subsection of finance. So that's a great way to communicate information. And again, we may do it visually with our headers, but now we're also conveying it to the screen readers, which is what we want. So once we have this styled and we have this for what we want, we're going to go ahead and click Save. Now, when you go to save, remember to use the same path. You're going to go to your C drive, users, whatever your username is, app data, roaming, Microsoft, templates, and that's where the Normal.doc file, you're going to replace that. You may have to save it in another location and then go ahead and come back and replace the file here. And you do have to have administrator rights. So it depends if you have to get maybe your IT department involved or not to go ahead and update that for your computer. So this way, every time you open up a document, you're going to have all of those presets already done. It is super helpful for creating ADA compliant documents, and you'll have everything set there, and everything will be in that document for you and other staff members to go ahead and kind of, again, hit the ground running with ADA, that they don't have to worry about putting alt text on the logo every single time that they want to open up a document and create something new. It's a huge time saver. Make sure that you always run your accessibility checker before you go ahead and save that to make sure you didn't miss anything. Microsoft will help you clean up those little basics. And don't forget to like my video if you found it helpful. If you want to drop a comment to let me know what other things you're struggling with digital accessibility and what maybe I can assist with, or the next video subject matter that you would like to see, drop me a comment, let me know, and be sure to follow me for more great videos in the future. Thanks so much, friends. Bye.